Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Griffith University alumni event. For those I haven't met before, my name's Joanne Nyland. I'm the Deputy Director of Development and Alumni at Griffith University, and I'm your MC for tonight's event. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Griffith University greatly values its relationships with its alumni, and we enjoy visiting them in their various locations around Australia and overseas. I'm delighted to see so many of you here tonight, and I know some of you have been to Griffith University alumni events before, so it's great to see you again. A number of things are happening at the university, and we are looking forward to sharing them with you as they evolve. The biggest thing that's happened to us recently is that we have a new Vice Chancellor. Professor Caroline Evans joined us in February and has already started to meet with staff and alumni and the community. And she is planning a cocktail function down here on the Gold Coast for her to meet all of you later in the year. We're also developing some new initiatives. You might recall at the end of last year, we asked for your opinions on what you might like to see in an alumni peer-to-peer mentoring program. So we're now beginning to build a program based on that feedback that we received. And there are lots of other opportunities for alumni such as yourselves to be involved with the university and its future and growth, including things like mentoring current students and each other, supporting students through work placements, and then providing feedback into things like strategy and programs in the university. Tonight, we particularly encourage you to get involved with our annual appeal. Alumni can make a difference in the lives of our current students who might be doing it tough. It really does take a village to support our students. And because donations to annual appeal are combined, any dollar figure when added together with everybody else's, donations can lead to big impacts in the lives of students. And tonight you can be part of that by talking to Karen over here at this table, and you can be certain that the students that you support will be most grateful. The other thing I want to bring to your attention tonight is this year's Outstanding Alumni Awards programme, which is currently open for nominations and closes on the 1st of May. Griffith University believes in, strives for and celebrates the remarkable, and never more so than when celebrating and recognising the successes of our alumni. Last year, we recognised some remarkable alumni who were doing fantastic things all over the world, including Brisbane, Los Angeles and Beijing. And again this year, our awards will celebrate the diverse achievements of our graduates. So if it's you, or if you know who this year's Outstanding Alumnus is, please nominate them and give them the opportunity to get the recognition they deserve. For tonight's event, though, we're focusing on our entrepreneurial alumni. And people say that life as an alumnus is not for the faint-hearted. And this seems to ring true when I think about the entrepreneurs I know, and there's 4 of them here. There are certain characteristics that are common amongst them, including things like perseverance and persistence and passion and positivity, but I'm sure not all at the same time. Shortly, we'll hear from each of our members of our panel who have certainly got those characteristics. And then after that, we'll open the floor to you. So you might want to have a think about the kind of questions you might want to ask the panel later tonight. But for now, though, it's time to meet our panel of alumni, who have generously agreed to share their time and stories with us this evening. I'm going to start at this end with Kai. So Kai Eris is the founder and CEO of Cinefly, a media tech company specialising in user-generated video content, a platform that lets you co-create video content with anyone, anytime, and anywhere around the world, transforming users into extraordinary storytellers. And next to Kai, we have Sonia McDonald, who is the CEO and founder of Leadership HQ, where she helps hundreds of people on their leadership journey to become the best versions of themselves, inspire and bring out the best in others. And then we have James Marshall, who is the founding partner of MWM Advisory, a Gold Coast-based accounting and business services firm, which delivers results across industry sectors and business life cycles, offering traditional accounting supplemented by a full suite of advisory and support resources. And our final panel member tonight is Dr Julianne Senyard. Julianne leads an undergraduate entrepreneurship program at Griffith that focuses on problem solving, creativity and developing an entrepreneurial mindset. And this is a course that's been rolled out across Griffith now. So please welcome our panel. So tonight's first speaker is Kai Eris. Kai is a 1993 Bachelor of Information Technology graduate. He spent 10 years of his career working in investment banking, where he served as global head of web and e-commerce for Deutsche Bank, Barclays Capital and Macquarie Bank across Tokyo, London, New York and Sydney. Kai then set up his own boutique consultancy that he ran for 10 years, offering strategy, innovation and advisory services for public and private companies, many of which were startups. And then in 2014, Kai founded Cinefly, a media tech startup with an international patent on adaptive storytelling and film. Cinefly's soft launch in March of 2018, and since then, Kai has partnered with one of the world's top film schools, signed his first enterprise customer on a 3-year deal, and carved out a niche in social, education, and tourism segments. Kai's vision is to use Cinefly as a platform for positive change, and one day hopes to be working with experts and world leaders to address major global issues. To tell us more about his journey, well done, you wrote that.
Yeah, who wrote that? My work here is done.
To tell us more about his journey, please welcome Kai.
Thank you. Hi everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and talk about my journey. So, what was the question again? So, my journey. So, I'm a 1993 Bachelor of Information Technology graduate. When I graduated, my father was actually living in Tokyo, so I decided to take a bit of time off, given that I'd got my degree, and spend 4 months in Tokyo kicking around, maybe teaching a bit of English. And when I first arrived in Tokyo, my father got me to put a CV together. I had no intention at all of living in Tokyo. And then 4 years later, I was working for Deutsche Bank Tokyo. And my first gig actually in Tokyo was with a chap called Paul Kitoka. And he was an entrepreneur. And he had a company that you probably haven't heard of. It's called NPS. And I had no idea what work was, so he took me under his wing and moulded me. So when I actually left NPS and started at Deutsche, I was like a machine. And so I spent 2 years in Tokyo just working. I'm not allowed to swear, am I? No.
There's one. We're allowed one.
Okay, just one. Okay, so working really hard. And I was fortunate because during that time, it was e-commerce. It was the heyday of e-commerce. And so if you had an idea scribbled on the back of a cigarette packet, they'd give you millions. And so I had the fortunate opportunity to be transferred to Deutsche Bank in London, where I worked with an amazing team of people. And in 1999, rolled something out that today is called Cloud. Had massive results for the bank. I was 27, I was promoted to Global Head of Web and E-commerce, which is quite exciting. And then I, at 2001, took my team out and we were going to achieve world domination, which is exactly the moment that the e-commerce bubble burst. So my first foray into startup land was death, doom and destruction, and very painful. I went to B2B, back to banking. I worked at Barclays Capital. That was challenging. I was successful in getting their e-commerce environment out, but then I started thinking that I need to get into innovation. I need to do something creative, and so I came back to Australia with the view of getting into film and storytelling. And then reality set in, and I realised I've got no experience and expertise to make it as a filmmaker and storyteller, so I started at Macquarie Bank. And I was there for 2 years, and during that time, Macquarie Bank was underwriter for a startup that you probably all well know called What If. And I was part of the DD team, the due diligence team, and I sat down with the founders of What If, and they walked me through all the stuff, and I was quite confident back then, verging on a little bit arrogant, and they showed me all their plans and their strategy, and I thought, I can do this, I should do this. And so after 2 years at Macquarie, I left and I started my own business, and I was providing consultancy to public and private companies with the aim of learning how to do a startup, become an entrepreneur. And it wasn't until 2014 that I thought that I had the experience and the expertise to get into my own startup, which is Cinefly. And the first 2 years, how much time do I have?
You've got a couple of minutes, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so the first 2 years, it was really exciting because we were looking at solving a really big problem around social, which is how do you raise awareness and motivate engagement when it's really expensive to put a storyteller, filmmaker, a journalist in the hands of people that need it the most. And when people are going through devastation, or there's some sort of issue and they need to get their story out, it's cost prohibitive to send a camera crew out there and capture their story. So I came up with an invention around how we can automate storytelling in film, and within about a year and a half, we had 1 million in funding lined up, and it was on the proviso that we would convert 3 customers, and the funding would be released. And about 8 weeks from product launch, both my founders left the organisation. We didn't finish the product, we couldn't close the customers, and we couldn't get the funding. So it was at the end of 2016 that I had an existential crisis and wondered, what am I doing? And basically, after a month or 2 months, maybe even 3 of just wallowing in darkness, bootstrapped the company, got back up, and where we soft launched in 2018, and we got the company back up, and we're back on track. So I've got battle scars to share with you guys tonight, so I really look forward to your questions and the engagement. That's my story.
Thanks, Kai. Our second panel member tonight, Sonia MacDonald, graduated in 1991 with a Bachelor of Business, Human Resources and Psychology. For more than 25 years, Sonia has been on the front line of human resource management. She's held leadership positions around the globe, and through experience, research and study, has come to realise what it takes to be a truly effective leader. She believes we should lead with kindness, from the heart, doing rather than telling, and is known for her mantra, just lead. She leads by example in all these areas, and through her one-on-one practical coaching, leadership and training for teams and organisations, encourages others to do the same. Sonia is a LinkedIn influencer and has become an in-demand keynote speaker. She's also an award-winning published author, and writes regularly for publications such as the Australian HRD magazine, Smart Healthy Women, and Women's Business Media. Sonia has become recognised for her commentary on the topic of leadership, the neuroscience of fear, championing the up-and-coming leaders of tomorrow, and advocating for women in business. To tell us more about her entrepreneurial journey, please welcome Sonia.
Okay, when I hear 1991, I'm kind of going, you're probably trying to work out how old I am, aren't you? I mean, okay, so, okay, my story. I graduated from Griffith University 1991 with a Bachelor of Business, and I majored in Human Resource Management. And it was really interesting. I was the first cohort of students when we only had one building out at Southport, sorry. So it was pretty phenomenal. And obviously after I left university, I was really blessed that I held senior and not so senior roles in human resources around the globe. My story, I think really started when I had decided to put my career on hold, and my husband at the time, he had been promoted, and we moved over to Shanghai, China. And I took our 3-year-old daughter, Abby, she's here tonight, we moved over to Shanghai, and I thought, gosh, it's going to be really cool not working. I thought, I'm going to have a bit of a break, I'm not going to work, I'm going to be this expat wife in Shanghai. And I got as bored as batshit. I was kind of there going, there's the one, ding, ding. So I thought, what, I'm going to try and open myself up to opportunities over there. And has anyone been to Shanghai? Yeah, pretty phenomenal place. And I ended up getting a great opportunity in Shanghai. Great learning experience. And then whilst I was over in Shanghai, my whole world fell apart. I became a full-time solo mum. I was left with $2,000 in the bank. And I had no idea what to do. It was devastating. It was unexpected. I knew I couldn't stay over there, being a full-time solo mum, because I didn't have the support network. So I jumped on a plane with my daughter, came back home with very little money, back to a very crappy Holden Commodore, and had to move back in with my parents here on the Gold Coast. And I thought, what am I going to do? And I was very blessed that the role I had in Shanghai, I was an Asia HR director over there. They said, we want you to try and do your role from Australia, but it was just too challenging. I had a 3-year-old, I had to keep flying back to Asia, and I knew I couldn't be the best I could be. So I tried to find another opportunity in the HR space, but I found it quite challenging back then. I mean, that was 14 years ago, to try and find something that would offer me the flexibility at a senior position. I mean, I think times have changed now, but back then it was challenging. So I decided to reinvent myself. I met someone that worked in the leadership development space, and he said to me, Sonia, I'm looking for someone to work on construction and engineering sites and to teach them leadership. I want you to be a coach and I want you to teach them about leadership. And he looked at me and he said, do you know much about leadership? And I looked at him and I said, I know so much about leadership. And I was like, oh, please don't ask me any questions, because I was kind of faking it. And anyway, I was lucky I had my degree, so I wasn't faking brain surgery, but I was like, okay, all right. You know, I had my HR business degree, but I kind of did put out that I knew a lot more than I did. Got the job. I bought every book I could on leadership. I read and I researched. I thought, gosh, I felt like I was back at uni. And I went and worked on these construction sites, and I completely fell in love with it. I loved it so much because I could see the difference it was making. And I thought to myself, gosh, if I could go back in time, the one thing I would say to my younger self is really learn about leadership and self-awareness. And I saw the difference it was making to these foremen and engineers around how to lead people to build roads and bridges. And then I started to write a blog. And the blog was called Leadership HQ. And a few people had said to me, you should start your own business. And I used to look at them and go, are you nuts? Like, why would I do that? What happens if I fail? And gosh, that is super scary. But I stood on a cliff. I call it like I felt like I stood on a cliff for a year thinking about it. And at home, I put flip chart all over this office I had at home. And I kind of started to think about what it could look like if I did turn the blog into a business. And after a year, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. That was 10 years ago, and I've had the company now for, 10 years. And now I've got a team of associates that contract to me. We now work all over Australia. I'm currently writing my third book, in the midst of my third book. I'm really still passionate about the writing, love speaking about the space, and I'm really passionate about I'm so passionate about building people's leadership, organisations, making a difference to teams and organisations, incredibly passionate around kind and courageous leadership. I just think we need more kind and courageous leaders around the globe, don't you think? I think we need more leaders full stop, but we need more people that are kind of courageous, and also to teach people that leadership isn't about role or title. Leadership's about an attitude, and it's about a mindset. And it's about action, and we can all make a difference. So that's my key message, and that's something that I'm truly passionate about, and also truly passionate about, and that's why I'm really passionate. My daughter's here tonight, building our future leaders. You know, that is, she's phenomenal. Building our, you are, you're amazing. You're amazing. Building our future leaders, because she's gone through a lot as well, the poor darling. I mean, she's my favourite leader. So, yeah, I feel really honoured for being here today and sharing some of my lessons and insights around how I can help you, because I'm a great believer, if I can do it, you can do it. So thank you.
You mentioned mindset in leadership there, and I feel like from what I've heard so far, mindset is important for entrepreneurship too, so it's probably a transferable
I think mindset's
skill.
everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my mindset in terms of, I've stuffed up so many times in 10 years, but it's always been my mindset and my passion and my purpose. I've always kept around aligned to my purpose. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so our third panel member tonight is James Marshall, a 1995 graduate of the Bachelor of Business.
2005.
2000.
We'll get very clear on that.
That's not what mine note.
2005. Thank you.
A graduate of the Bachelor of Business, Accounting, Finance and Microeconometrics. Founding partner of MWM Advisory, James has always had a passion for people and business. Communication and leadership through all types of scenarios and situations are some of the things he enjoys the most. All of this combined has seen him create a practice that is at the forefront of the accounting profession, as it itself goes through its own changes. Recent success for James include receiving the Finance Award at the Business News Australia Gold Coast Young Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, wow, that's a mouthful, which recognised the most successful business founders under 40, so it might be 2005 after all, who have built thriving businesses, delivered innovation and taken an idea to great heights. To tell us how he did it, please welcome James.
They're recorded. Yeah. It's a bit hard to follow two overachievers, I might add, so we'll kind of struggle along. it sounds like you've both got great businesses and you both need a new accountant. So I'm more than happy to talk afterwards. In fact, about 10 of the team are actually here tonight. So look, thank you to all you guys for turning up. I mean, you guys make these events. They're really cool. I think that needs a big round of applause. This sort of stuff actually excites me because the more people you can get in the room, the more the message gets out, and so on and so on and so on. So, and look, yeah, thanks to Griffith for acknowledging my 1995. I think I was in like year 5 or year 6 then, so that I was definitely an overachiever at that point if it was 1995. A bit about me. I'll try and keep it short because I'm not as amazing as these two. I'm a country kid. I grew up in a tiny little town in northwest WA. I don't know if anyone's seen Red Dog, the movie about a little dog. I actually grew up in that town. And I can tell you for a fact that all of those stories are true. I swam in the shark cage as a kid, and I'll almost start crying about it when I talk about it because it's an amazing part of the world. Red Dog, the statue, is about 200 metres from my house. And one day I actually talk about buying the house I grew up in as a kid because it was such an amazing and beautiful place. You fast forward to 2002, 2003. I actually had a bit of a different course. I played a fair bit of sport as a kid, and so that meant the end of my high school was a bit different around that. And I also decided that when I was at university, I didn't want to earn $9.85 an hour at Subway or McDonald's. So I decided to take advantage of my former tennis career and do a lot of tennis coaching and personal training whilst going to uni. So I would turn up to uni with wads of $50 notes thinking I was pretty awesome, and I would juggle and create my own hours whilst going to university. Whilst going through that, I started coaching a guy who'd turn up in this big fancy black S-Class Mercedes-Benz, and I'd get talking to him on a Saturday morning. He had 3 little girls, and I eventually found out he was a partner of what was then one of the largest accounting firms on the Gold Coast. Christmas came along one year, and he says to me, look, you seem like a pretty talkative kid. When do you finish uni? And being I'm not going to use the budding entrepreneur word, you guys swore once, so I'll swear once at this point and say being the bullshit artist I was at that point, I politely told him that I was graduating university that summer. I think I'd been at uni for a year. And as a result, I'd more than welcome being an undergraduate in his practice if he'd try me out. He tried me out for 4 weeks over the Christmas period, and they gave me a job. The job came with a condition. I had to work full-time, and I wanted to get my degree out of the way. So I worked full-time and studied full-time for my undergraduate. And during that time, it was a bit of a unique environment for me. The firm was relatively large. It had 40-odd people in it. There were 3 males in the organisation. They were all partners, and there were no males outside of that in the organisation. So that meant that the 3 male partners had a new young, this sounds terrible, but toy boy in the office, which meant that I got to hang out with these guys every day very early on. Some of them have actually floated a series of publicly listed companies here on the coast. And so I was quite fortunate in that I showed that I had a desire to learn and want to understand a bunch of things because for some reason numbers made sense to me. But numbers in themselves, they're kind of fun, but they're a lot more enjoyable if they can tell a story. And it's something my mother has said to me many times over the years is that, James, if you can't explain your topic to an 8-year-old, you don't understand your topic well enough. So as a result of that, I found myself in positions very early on in my career, subsequent to graduating in 2005, whereby I could be a sponge as much as I could. The typical Suits or whatever corporate rubbish sitcom that exists of working 1,000 hours a week and not standing at the coffee machine did exist, and you would intentionally get to work before everyone, even if that meant you were just photocopying to prove that you were there first. And you would stay back to be the last person at night, again, even if that meant you were photocopying. And that progressed, and I was provided with a bunch of opportunity. And then in about 2012, it all started to come together for me. I'd done a subsequent bunch of postgrad study, and for some reason, people seemed to think I was good at explaining my topic. And at that point in time, my ego got in the way, and these partners at this firm said, well, you know, you should be so thankful we've given you an opportunity, and now you need to pay us to buy into partnership because without us you wouldn't have a career. And I might have said that at that point. And so I left and started out on my own. There's actually, where's Daz? There he is, Darren Chan, third in from the left, he can put his hand up. Darren, I was a manager, then associate at the practice, and I walked up to Darren one day and I said, hey Darren, thinking about leaving, I'm going to go out on my own. I've got this idea, I think accountants have got it backwards. What if we left the accounting piece to the last bit and we actually spoke to business owners and found out what their problems are and we just tried to help them? Let's just do the right thing and ask the right questions. I don't know why he believed me, but he did. We left, started a practice called MWM Advisory. We started with a couple of people. There's 35 plus of them floating around in the office some 6 years later, and a good chunk of all of that comes from word of mouth. It hasn't come as a result of a variety of other things. It's amazing what happens when you just do the right thing by people. So I think the journey so far has been learning what that is. There's been 870,000 mistakes along the way. And it's really, for me these days, about learning that how we got to where we got to now to get to that next level, which interestingly enough, I'm sitting here thinking, well, I think I need both of you in my life somehow. That now requires another evolution of those things. So that's a really cool journey because it means rebuilding yourself as a person to be able to get to that level. So it's about reaching out and finding those people. And the Gold Coast is the best place in the world to live. Like it really is. Like look where we are,
Look at the view.
you know, and look at the opportunity that exists. Business is global these days. It is absolutely global. You can run a business from anywhere within context. So why wouldn't we do that other than a place like this? So that's enough about me.
I'd certainly agree with that, looking at the view out of the window here
it's amazing.
tonight.
He does sound like an overachiever though, doesn't he? Who here thinks James is an overachiever?
I'll pay you later.
Okay, and last but not least, to provide a slightly different perspective and to tell us more about why Griffith is making entrepreneurship such a priority is Dr Julianne Senyard, who in addition to being a lecturer at Griffith is also an alumnus. Julianne leads and manages a cross-disciplinary team of entrepreneurship and innovation champions from medicine, design, IT and engineering. Julianne brings a unique perspective to entrepreneurship with her prior experience as an entrepreneur practitioner and more recently as a full-time academic. Her research focus is resourcefulness, bricolage and innovation in startups, and she was recently awarded an Isambard Kingdom Brunel Research Fellowship. Julianne is an accredited facilitator for 3-Day Startup and Lean Launchpad, and she is passionate about giving students a range of experiences in entrepreneurship. Please make welcome Julianne.
Hey, thanks everyone for being here tonight. And it's kind of nice to be the last person on the panel because you get to see the breadth of experience and the breadth of stories. And as somebody who's very passionate about entrepreneurship, it's a wonderful opportunity to be here tonight to talk to you about some of the things that we're doing at Griffith and some of my passions. So while a lot of you have gone through Griffith and there wasn't much in terms of entrepreneurship, now at Griffith, entrepreneurship is actually a graduate capability. So we assess all students around their ability to think and be passionate, to think differently, to thinking about creation and innovation and ways to change the world. I am fortunate enough to actually be part of a program which looks at undergraduates from all faculties and working in cross-disciplinary teams to solve problems. I actually make them fail a lot. I make them fail as teams to make sure that they understand that despite the media attention around these big successful entrepreneurs, the reality is a lot of entrepreneurs fail. And your response to that is an artifact of your learning, right? So I get students together to work on problems, to come up with new ideas, and a lot of pitching. Because a lot of the skills that we're going to need our students to have in the future is around flexibility, adaptability, creativity, problem solving. All of these are skills that I want to embed in our students. The other piece of my career at the moment is research around people just like these people on the panel. So some of the stuff that I do is around I study MacGyver entrepreneurs, which is probably as simple as I possibly could explain it. So how do entrepreneurs make do with the resources on hand to create new things? Now, often, when you think about entrepreneurs and when they're in startup, they don't have all the things that they need. But what kinds of things do they do in terms of behaviors or processes? What kinds of networks do they create? What kinds of resources or skills do they build? Like your stories around doing a lot of reading and trying to build skills and capabilities before you launch. That's the kind of stuff that I study. I've been really lucky to understand how different types of teams shapes decisions of startup success. But a lot of the stuff I do is around resilience and understanding how learning about the tools that you have can shape different trajectories in terms of startup success. So in terms of Griffith has given me lots of opportunities to talk to amazing entrepreneurs and hear their stories. But it also has given me lots of opportunities to think around the future leaders of entrepreneurs, and the narrative of being able to shift ever so slightly the student's perception of what job do you want to go to versus what job do you want to create. Because that's the world that we're living in now. There's so much opportunity, and building an entrepreneurial mindset enables students to really see not what is, but what if. What if we could do that? That would be amazing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the questions and answers and being able to talk with you guys a little further. But that's kind of what I do at Griffith.
Thank you, Julianne.
Can I just interrupt? I forgot someone else when I mentioned Darren. I didn't realise that Emma Sullivan over in the corner, I need to dob you in too. She was the second person I had to convince after only working for me for a couple of months. So sucked in.
So thank you to all our panel. I certainly found your conversations and your stories very enlightening. And James, I apologise for getting your graduation. I do have a couple of questions I would like to put to you, though, if that's okay. And James, I thought I might start with you. So you have been massively successful with MWM Advisory, and all of our panel tonight have been highly successful entrepreneurs. I'm thinking about an article I read recently about an alumnus for whom things didn't quite go to plan. And the article indicated that the business that they were running had failed because they trusted what their customers told them, and their market research was focused on what their customers said rather than what their customers did. And I think it was Steve Jobs who said, when people don't know what they want until you tell them. How, as an entrepreneur, do you make decisions and choose pathways in an environment that's so uncertain? How did you know that a business services accounting firm was what was needed?
Made a lot of mistakes. I think I had a very good family friend, and this day resonates in my head for a very long time. Finishing high school, you have those grand ambitions of your first Porsche and Ferrari, and you'll have that by 25, and you'll be retired with your boat at 45, and all these types of things. And this family friend's an orthopaedic knee surgeon. He was the first orthopaedic knee surgeon in Australia to perform dual operations at the same time, so he would move between two theatres at once. And he said to me, James, he sat me down one day and he said, James, let me explain something to you. He said, let's really talk about entrepreneurs and let's talk about intelligence. And what we'll find is that intelligent people predominantly will move towards professions or careers that don't involve risk. And they do that because they're trained to be quite intelligent people, and so they understand risk. They move into fields like being a doctor or an engineer or an accountant or an architect or being a lawyer. It's very clear, strong pathways in relation to that. Now, you'll never save the world, but you'll be in a safe bubble. The entrepreneur says, I don't really give a crap about any of the risk. That just seems like a great idea, so I'm going to do whatever it is that I need to do to go and do that. And they will blindly run off into the dark, not realising that there's a cliff 5 steps ahead of them, and they will run straight over the top of it. And the key, James, is trying to talk to the parrot that sits on your right shoulder and the parrot that sits on your left shoulder and make a combined decision. The biggest problem that we fall into all too often is to not make a decision. A very, very long time ago, that same man reminded me of the 3-1-3 principle. Every time you come up with an idea, or you want to move forwards, come up with the 3 different options or scenarios available to you. Then pick one. Doesn't matter which one, but pick one and provide yourself with a reason for why you're doing it. Now that idea is not going to work, but you're going to move forwards. And the minute you move forwards, you've then got another 3 options. And when you get to those 3 options, apply the same principle. And if you continue to do that enough, without worrying about the fact that, you know what, this is going to hurt along the way, if you can make enough mistakes with limiting the downside quick enough, you start to understand where you need to go, and the gut feel kicks in because you've been down that road before. So that's kind of how it evolved, because you see these things, and I was lucky enough early enough to be presented with opportunities to make plenty of those mistakes. I tried as hard as I could to continually make up for them, and you'd have to bounce back the following day and not let it get to you. Playing a lot of competition and international level sport as a kid told you that very quickly you have to dust off losses, because if you don't progress. So wake up the following day and look yourself in the mirror and just have another crack.
Or a couple of months, as Kai said.
Yeah, or a couple of months. Absolutely.
3 months.
So,
Okay, so thank you for that. So Kai, before becoming an entrepreneur, you worked in companies for other people.
Yes.
And we've heard a lot tonight about entrepreneurship from the perspective of business startups, but many of our guests work in companies and organisations owned by others.
Yes.
I'm sure that you can be an entrepreneur within any organisation. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on the kind of skills and mindsets that you've discussed here tonight that might translate for people who are working for other people.
Skills and mindsets. Okay. Ikigami, I think is the way you pronounce it. There's a Japanese term which is purpose, and it's a really simple methodology. There's 4 parts to it. One is, do you have a capability? Do you have expertise, domain expertise in something? The second thing is, do I love this? Is this something that I really want to do? The third part of it is, does the world need it? Is it solving a particular problem? And the fourth bit, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't really consider because they're just excited, is it going to make me money? Well, then again, it depends though, because you could be a different entrepreneur and you could start with, is this going to make me money? But so I think they're the kind of 4 broad things to consider. But in terms of mindset, I think you need to be really brave. I've certainly found that there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, everyone's talked about making mistakes. You find that you're really passionate about something, and then suddenly, you're putting a patent through, and you'll find that somebody else has got a patent. And the first thing you think is, oh my God, I can't believe somebody else is doing it. But what you find is once you calm down and you start thinking about it, and we were talking about this before, divergent thinking. You have to really be adaptive, you have to be curious, and you have to really, I hate the term think outside the box. And so you have to have the confidence not to give up, because you're going to come across competitors, obstacles, a whole bunch of stuff. So you need the bravery and the confidence to persevere, but you also need to be able to be nimble. And in startups, when you're an entrepreneur, there are occasions where you need to also pivot, which is you're heading in one direction and you go, okay, we're not going to go anywhere, and you have to pivot. So they're the kind of 2 things that I would put forward is having the confidence to persevere and being confident in yourself, looking at those broad concepts as well, because they're all really important, but also being really adaptive and being able to think creatively to move forward. And you find that energy of confidence and that creativity is what will move you forward and move you past a lot of obstacles. And I've found that certainly when I was inside organisations and certainly when running a startup.
Unfortunately, divergent thinking is more acceptable for a contemporary entrepreneur, unlike the movie where it's not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, the thing is also with contemporary entrepreneurs these days, in '93, if you had an idea, there were no vehicles within universities really to do anything. And so these days, being a contemporary entrepreneur, you've got, it's a pervasive theme across academia, government and industry. It's so much easier to be able to think creatively and have a support network around you that will, give you funding and support that. So, yes.
Fantastic, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
So, Sonia, you work in leadership and HR fields, providing guidance and advice to leaders. The word I want to come back to at the moment is kind of mentoring. Mentoring in leadership is well talked about, but I wondered if you had any thoughts on what part you would suggest that mentors or sponsors would play in an entrepreneur's life.
Yeah, that's a really good question, I suppose, because I mentor and coach, and I've actually got several mentors and coaches myself. And I'd have to say it's actually the number one asset I have in terms of the work that I do, in terms of being the best version of myself to help others, but also it's been the best investment and asset in terms of having mentors and coaches work with me. Because, I find it can be quite lonely being an entrepreneur. Sometimes you kind of sit there and you go, well, hang on a second, you kind of want to have all these different ideas, and I'm constantly, like, as an entrepreneur, even today, I get attracted by all these different butterflies. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a butterfly, there's another idea, and I could do this and I could do that, and sometimes, like, I'm going, and in the last 10 years that I've been in business, and as I know we've mentioned about mistakes and things, is that I kind of sit there and go, am I the only one making these mistakes as well? So for me, having people around me that are mentors, and they're all very different mentors as well, has actually been fundamental, not only in keeping me focused, but also providing guidance, advice, keeping me on track, keeping me on purpose. And I think they have been the absolute number one key for me and my business being where it is today. And most of the mentors that I have, they just are there because they really care about me and my business, and they want to see me succeed. And that's the same thing that I do with the people I mentor. I'll do anything to help them succeed and be their greatest cheerleader and provide that guidance. I don't always take their guidance or advice. Sometimes I go, oh, you bugger off, like, you don't know what you're talking about, and then I kind of go, well, at the end of the day, they're always there to support you. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's really important that you have those people around you.
It's like a mastermind group, isn't it?
It is. It's like a board of advisors that are, it's like a
master. You can trusted advisor, yes.
Yeah, it's...
This is why both of you need new accountants. See? It's really working out.
We should have spoken a few months ago, actually. I was looking for a new accountant. Could be still looking for a new accountant. But yeah, I just think that it's really important as an entrepreneur that, and it's also, I think, as well, showing vulnerability that you don't have all the answers, and to say, I don't know what to do here. I'm kind of at these crossroads. And it happened to me, actually, funnily, just a couple of weeks ago. I was at this crossroad with my business, and my mentors all pulled me, I meet with them separately. They said, Sonia, I don't think you're seeing what we're seeing. And I said, no, and I kept pushing back, going, no, I don't know if I want to go in that direction. They said, Sonia, you need to start looking at this direction. And I kind of sat there for a day and went, you're right. And now my business is going in a different direction because I was too close to it. And having those people there, my gosh, honestly, I could ring them and say, can I talk to you? Yep, I'm here. What do you need? Let's talk this through. So that's why networking, coming to these things are really important, because you don't know who you're going to meet. I've met CEOs and said, can you be my mentor? And they've gone, I'd love to be a mentor. Don't be afraid to ask people that you see through your network or on LinkedIn or wherever to be your mentor, to help you. If you've got ideas out there, if you're actually working for someone and thinking, I wouldn't mind starting my own business, or I have got a great idea, or I've got this dream or goal, ask people for help. Just say, hey, I just wondering if we could explore this. Can I tell you they're the most important things? And it takes a lot of courage to do it, but just do it.
And join the mentoring program when we launch it later this year.
Yeah, and join a mentoring program as well,
Cool.
Yeah.
Julianne, we've talked a little bit tonight about mistakes and failures and problems, and you mentioned that one of the things that you teach in your courses is particularly around resilience.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if we could explore that just a little bit more, how you build resilience in both in the entrepreneurs themselves, but how they then build resilience in the people around them and the others they're working with?
Good question.
I think a lot of what I do with the students is more around, we do a lot of failure, like exercises where I intentionally set them up to fail about things that they don't really care about. And the reason why I do that is because if it's not something that they care about, they're less likely to have like an emotional negative reaction, but it's still giving them that learning lesson. And resilience is something that we all need to see as a consequence of the increasing complexity of our world, right? We live in a world now where there is so much going on, and often people get lost. And all of the panelists tonight talked around failure and decisions to engage in spite of those kind of responses to things that didn't work out the way that they planned. But listening to the panelists tonight, it was really interesting. You were talking about a lot of things that we discuss as academics. So there's an orientation called an Entrepreneurial Orientation, which talks about a list of behaviors around measured risk. So risk-taking behaviors, entrepreneurs are typically more risky, or they think around risk in different ways. So what they actually do is a lot of entrepreneurs measure risk differently. Entrepreneurs are typically proactive, so that means get going. They always get going, and they tend to innovate. So they see solutions and try and do things very differently. Passion is a field within entrepreneurship which drives behaviors but drives innovation, all kinds of things. And within my classes, I did quite a bit of work around empathetic design. So when you're talking around mentoring and having this ability to listen, but also to sort of understand, your mentors, and as a mentor, but also as a mentee, really listening to one another to make really good decisions. So a lot of what the panelists talked about tonight are some of the things that I study and some of the things that I'm really resonated with me. So failure is, given that statistics indicate that, and it's really tricky to measure failure, like generally in Australia, but depending on who you're talking to, those that are really optimistic or those that are maybe a little bit more realistic, around 80% of all small businesses fail. But in by actually doing a lot of the things that the panelists talked about, like reflecting on what happened in terms of failure and learning those lessons, you become more resilient, but actually better entrepreneurs, because you go, okay, not this, I'm ready to pivot, which I always think of as like that netball. When at netball, when you see those girls running and then they go, hoo, and then they go, oh, this way, not this way, this way. But it makes better businesses, more innovative ideas, right? So
it's also really frustrating for your team when they think they're going that way and they're going this way. So
true.
Help in that space would be great from the fellow panelists.
Yeah, but that was.
I find that talking to investors, the number one thing they look for is people, right?
Right.
That's the first thing they invest in. So they know that the market conditions might change, or the product may not really resonate with customers. But they're willing to put money in the team because they believe that the team are adaptable and smart and can make it work. So.
And brave.
And brave.
And brave, yes.
So we're going to give you the chance to ask a couple of questions now. There are some microphones around the room, so if you have a question you want to ask the panel, you just pop your hand up in the air.
Hi guys. My question was on mentoring. My thunder was stolen a little there. But I guess, but building on that, how did you know which mentors to choose? What was that? Was it a gut feeling? Was it sort of an instinct? How did you know who to choose, and how did you approach them?
Okay, am I going first? I was looking.
You always go first.
I have not a mentor, but I've got somebody who's really smart, Rick Richardson, and he said to me when I was embarking on Cinefly, he said to me, find someone that's in your industry that's exited, or someone that's gone through the life cycle that you're going to go through in a business, and reach out to them and let them know who you are, and make sure that they've got that experience to take you through that journey. And along the way, I've also identified that through just talking to people that you're going to have some natural talents, but you're also going to have some gaps in your ability, and it might be certain leadership traits that you may have that are maybe a bit blinkered, and having somebody that necessarily doesn't agree with you is really important. And there's a guy that my good friend put me in touch, well, not in touch with, but told me about, and I'm really loving his stuff. His name is Ray Dalio. You know the guy.
The best book in the world, Principles.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So he's got this concept. He's built a culture. He runs the biggest hedge fund business in the world, which is probably why you know him.
Yeah.
He's like...
He bet against the GFC.
And won
massively.
So he's introduced what he calls an idea meritocracy in his organisation. Yeah. And so what they do is he has like a believability factor. So he gets everybody in a room and they're talking about all this stuff, and everyone has a say, and you're measured on a number of different facets, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, and they affect, it's like a scorecard. And so over time what happened, and it's very confronting if you can imagine, but what they found is that they've developed into what they call kind of a learning organisation where everybody, you don't have to agree with everybody, there's no politics because it's all about the best idea winning. And they invite people that have got... So, long story short, for me, if I'm looking at expanding my team and getting the right people on board, I would be looking at all those different character traits, domain experience that would ultimately lead to the best kind of balance of thinking and strategy.
Yeah, I kind of get to flip that on its head a bit, and this is actually something I'm trying to work through at the moment, because for a long time, I probably didn't have too many. It was actually my tennis coach growing up as a kid. This man was amazing. And you know, I've spent a lot of time learning by trial and error, reading a lot of books and listening to audio stuff, and that really appeals to me. I think everyone learns differently, and sometimes you can really resonate with different things. And I think for me, what I've really started to find is that mentor or that person might not actually be the person that you think it needs to be. They don't need to be the most successful person in the room. We've all got gaps in who we are and where the chink in the armour is. And sometimes it could be the simplest of person who sits back in an hour of their time to just listen and actually stop and truly listen, actually be in the moment. I've just finished reading a book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. I finally read that book. It's been sitting in my office for 6 years. Right? And I actually had a mentor give me that book to say, you should read this. It's going to make you a better person. And I wasn't ready for that. For whatever reason, I felt I needed to do some other things. So the key was I was doing things, but that journey has now taught me that that's a different stage. And so at that different stage, we need to listen and learn in a different way. And some of those people I'm talking to now, they've been in my life for 10 years, and I've never actually once thought, why didn't I ask that person that question? I could have done that 3 years ago and solved that problem, but I didn't. So being more open to anyone, I think is really important.
And different people at different times.
Yeah. Absolutely. And get Sonia, basically. Yes, shameless plug.
I imagine you'd have a network of quite a lot of people because you're mentoring leaders and transforming them into leaders. So you would have like leaders on tap.
Yeah, and one of the things, that's a good idea. Maybe I should start a new business around that. That's a good idea, leaders on tap. So I love...
It needs an accountant, by the way.
And a cinematographer.
I do love connecting people with people. That's something that I'm really passionate about. Because even when I'm coaching and mentoring, sometimes, and people will ask for me to mentor them, and I'll meet them and go, I actually don't think I'm the right mentor. Right. But I do know someone that is. But I think it's really key what you both. I mean, you have to be really open to it. They could be anywhere. You know, you could have a cup of coffee with someone and go, wow, there's a real connect. Like, I think I could learn a lot from you. I tend to find it's finding mentors that have different strengths and skills to me. Yeah. It's really important as well.
LinkedIn's a good resource as well, I find. LinkedIn?
Yeah. LinkedIn's an amazing resource. But I mean, it's just just being really open to it, and don't be afraid to ask people. If you meet someone or, you hear someone speak or something, go, wow, that person I could learn a lot from, ask them, can we have a cup of coffee, and can we, and also can I tell you, mentoring is about how you can help them as well. It's not about it's a give and it's a very much a two-way street with mentoring. I've learned so much from my mentees as well, and I think that's really important.
Thank you. Thanks. We have another question over here.
I actually have a question for Sonia, but I'm firstly going to say I work for James,
can you be
and
my
we
mentor?
would love for you to come into the office and talk to us. My question is, after you effectively bluffed your way into the position that you talked about, knowing a lot about leadership, what was, I guess, the biggest challenge that you had once you obtained that job, and maybe more importantly, how did you deal with that situation and come out on top?
Oh, what was my biggest challenge?
Once you actually got into the position.
Once you faked it to make it.
Maybe once I faked it. I'm going to talk about a couple of challenges. Probably the number one was I was a solo mum. So that was really challenging for me. Thank you. That was really challenging for me, trying to juggle being a solo mum and also working on construction sites and being a consultant and trying to really learn everything I could around the space. So I worked really, really hard while trying to juggle bringing up a 3-year-old on my own. So that was my biggest challenge, and I learned a lot about myself around resilience during that time. And I think the focus for me during that time is I wanted to be the best for her. So I wanted to lead by example, show if I could do it, she could do it. And so I really wanted to set an example for her around that. The other challenge was I was kind of faking it. So sometimes turning up to site and feeling like a bit of an imposter. So I had this imposter syndrome going on, like I would literally drive out to the back of Ipswich knowing that I'd have to coach all these engineers and superintendents about leadership. And at the lights, I'd get the book out going, okay, what's the emotional intelligence thing that I need to present? Wow. And I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, if someone finds out that I am literally faking this, one of my favourite quotes by Mike Myers is, one day my biggest fear is the no talent police are going to come and arrest me. And I was like, what happens if someone knows more than me and I'm presenting or I'm coaching and someone goes, hang on a second, that's not right. And we go, oh my God, what chapter was that in? I feel like I was at uni again. The thing is, for me to overcome that is that I just went, I don't know all the answers. However, I'm really committed to helping you be the best you can be, and let's just discover how we can learn this together. And also that I just had to believe in myself. I think that at the end of the day, can I tell you, confidence matters, I think, more than competence. I just went, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. There were days that I used to think, oh my gosh, what happens? But you know what? And there still is today. Sometimes I go, gosh, what else is someone finds out? But at the end of the day, I went, you know what? We've only got this one life. We've only got this one life, and I do not want to get to however old I get to and look back on my life and say, I didn't give it the best crack I did and believed in myself.
I think confidence was the word
Yeah,
going through
it
my
was
mind as you
absolutely
were
the
talking about it.
confidence, yeah.
Absolutely.
All that other stuff was before Google too, but right? So you would have been fine. I could check on the phone.
Yeah.
Ask Siri. Siri, what's emotional intelligence?
I think we've got time just for one more quick question. Just down the front here.
Thanks to each of you for sharing your story. It's been really interesting and inspirational as well for someone that's self-employed. My question's for Kai. You mentioned talking about the startup phase of Cinefly.
Yes.
You made a fairly offhand comment that I just invented something. Could you, the innovation or the innovative feature of Cinefly?
Sure.
You described it as I invented it. Could you unpack or explore that concept?
What it means, sure. So you get inspiration, you call it butterfly, so you go, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And I had that moment. And so what I did, because I was consulting the startups, I'm going to give you a really scientific and kind of structured approach. I answer. So So I thought, this is a really great idea. The first thing I did was I went online to see if anybody else was doing it. And then I went to my friend Rick Richardson to see if there was a patent behind that. And he did what's called a prior art search and found that there was nobody else that was doing it and helped me put a patent in. And then I took that idea and then I canvassed the market. So I went to potential customers that would find benefit in that solution. I said, look, I've got this PowerPoint, I've got an idea, what do you think? And then I got 10 letters of support and intent. And then I took that I was in Canberra at the time, I took that to the government and I said, I have an idea, I filed a patent and I've got 10 customers, not without giving me non-binding letters of support and intent. I'd like to get a grant. And I went through a grant process, I got $50,000 and I then went through, you go through a number of different iterations. And when you look at a business and you take a step back, you need to recognise that there's different phases, and each phase has got a set of KPIs. So when you're starting off, you need idea validation, idea validation, you could call it that. But then you need to go through commercial validation. So once you build a prototype, people have to be willing to pay for that. And then once you go through commercial, once you've got commercial viability, then what you need to do is you need to build a product and build a business model around that. And then you go to market, and then I won't get into too much detail, but you then go through what's called product market fit. Mm-hmm. And at that stage, you're looking for seed or angel funding. And typically it's your friends or family or grants. And fortunately today there's a lot of places where you can get money, which is really great. And it's not until you've gone through that product market fit that you're really ready to go to Series A. And these days, while it's easier to get a lot of help in schools and grants and what have you, investors have become a lot more sophisticated. So they have concepts like the Mendoza line and all these different things and benchmarks that they'll rate you on, and decision risk matrices and everything. So you have to understand how all of these work so that you can get to that point and have a story where the investor is ticking all the check boxes. So that's kind of unpacking the story, but it's, you go through the seed angel, you test commercial viability, you get product market fit. At that point, you've demonstrated that you've got something that people need, and you go to Series A to unlock Series A funding, which may give your company a valuation of somewhere between 10 to 15 million, and you're looking to raise about 1 to 2 million. You should know all this. You're looking at me going, yes. Right. So, they will look at, they'll do cohort analysis. They'll have all these type of metrics. So really what you need to do is, when you're embarking on this journey, is really take a step back, look at the whole life cycle of a business from seed, angel, to Series A, Series B, all the KPIs, all the metrics, all the key critical success factors to take you through each phase, and make sure that that's your target. I found early in my career that I was just given the wrong advice. So I started, and they said, "What's your cash flow projections?" And I just had a prototype, so I really didn't. So I just made numbers up. I went, $1 billion in 3 years. It's going to become a unicorn. And I realised now that if you work with much more experienced investors, they will give you the right metrics and KPIs. So you need to make sure that you're not heading towards somewhere, because scarcity, you don't have much to go with when you're an entrepreneur, and you have to work with things like a minimal viable product. You need to just do what's good enough to get you to that next phase. So coming up with an invention is one thing, creating a product is another thing, but then creating a business, altogether a different thing. And world domination.
Is that still your goal?
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
I still want to know what the product is that you invented.
Do you want to know?
Yeah.
I'm going to geek out now. So some of you are going to glaze over, might lose you. 10 years ago, content was mostly text. Today, it's photos and visual, and everybody's moving towards video. And you see that. So a lot of companies are moving from putting photos up to creating video, but video's still really expensive. You need specialist resources. complex equipment, and it takes time and money. And so what we've done is we've automated post. So instead of spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on video, it costs less than a cup of coffee to produce a video on our platform. But what's unique about what we do is we're all about authentic and real storytelling. So we've got a platform, a part of which is a mobile app. And in the mobile app, we've got a concept of director's guides. And the director's guide can be a storyteller, a filmmaker, an expedition leader. It could be a scientist, a teacher. And they guide you on what to say and what shots to take. So what it does, it puts those experts in the palm of your hand. And you go through, and it's like having a journalist or a person or a film crew going, don't stand there, that's the shot. And so what happens is you follow those guides, you become a better storyteller, and then you press a button and it produces the film. And where the patent is, which is the really geeky part of it all, is that we've got a patent in adaptive storytelling and film. So you can have a storyboard on a mobile app that you can share with your friends and family. So it could be a business context or a social context. So for example, if you're raising awareness about the Victorian bushfires, you might have a storyboard that splits, and you're capturing the devastation that's happening to the families, you're interviewing them. I'm just doing a B-roll of all the fire and destruction, and somebody else is interviewing somebody else, and it then adapts those different narratives and brings it together to create the story. And what it will also do is, depending on who's in your team, it will break the narrative down into bits. So each person that's got a mobile phone, you've got a script and it guides you on where to go. So it's like, and the guides are by professional filmmakers, storytellers, what have you. So that's the adaptive storytelling component. The adaptive film component is because each shot that you take has something called metadata, because you've got a director's guide that's saying, introduce yourself, shot 1. Shot 2, tell us what happened. Shot 3, tell us what you're doing about it. Because each shot's got a metadata, those shots go into the database. I see your eyes glazing in the front there. No? Okay, look at me. So each shot that goes in the database then can be reassembled to different narratives. So you can go and say, compile a video of everybody that is volunteering. And so what it'll do is create a video going, hi, I'm Bob. Hi, I'm Mary. Hi, I'm John. And so that adaptive storytelling in film allows us then to tackle, and it sounds, I'm not going to swear, because my mum's probably going to be watching this video. But, so what it does is a lot of organisations that are combating climate change, food waste, it's hard for them to effect positive change at scale. You know, it's very, you know, if you had, you know, a behavioural economist, or you had a scientist or somebody come into your living room and talk to you about food waste, it would have a really big impact. And so with the platform, what we're able to do, because everyone's got a mobile phone, we can take those experts and we can put them in the hands of individuals, guiding them on what to say, what to do, affecting their behaviour. And because we've automated post, we can solve that problem of scale. Wow. So that's Cineph like that.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
You gave him the in, James. That's unfortunately all we've got time for from our panel, but our panel members are staying around for networking, so I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have a chat with you, so please come up and say hello. I'd like to sincerely thank our panel for being here tonight and for sharing their stories and